Good morning and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. I'm running about 45 minutes late today. I had an early morning obligation, so I apologize for this not being at my normal 8:15 time. I hope you still get to see it or watch it later in the day. On this last day of Labor Day week, we want to look at a couple of jobs that we don't encounter very often nowadays, but which were important in Bible times, and at one job we probably wouldn't like to have. First, we want to talk about a tanner. Now, we do have tanners today, but the process has been industrialized, and it's very different than it was then. Tanners are still needed to treat and prepare leather goods. Tanners in Bible times dealt with all kinds of animal skins, and they had a variety of purposes. Goat skins were used to make bottles to carry water, hold new wine, or even milk. These goat skin bags were also used as churns to make butter. Sheepskins were used in making shoes, and some clothing was made of leather. All of them were prepared by the tanner, and Jesus referred from time to time about wineskins, and in Acts, Peter stayed at the home of Simon the tanner. Interestingly, when I went to Israel, the first place we stopped, because it was close to the airport, was the traditional home of Simon the tanner. St. Paul was also a tanner and a tent maker. Tent makers were also more important than you might think. By the time of the New Testament, many lived in homes like we do today, but there were still quite a number who lived in tents and moved with their herds. In Old Testament times, tents were the norm. They were often constructed by using goat hair woven together. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob likely spent their entire lives in tents, and before the temple was built in Jerusalem, the Ark of the Covenant resided in the tabernacle, which was a large tent. So in some ways, you could say that God lived in a tent too, or at least that God's presence was in a tent in a special way. When Paul goes to Corinth, he worked with Priscilla and Aquila, who were tent makers. In Bible times, there were also a number of day laborers, although I don't think most of us would like to do this kind of work. Day laborers were typically uneducated and had no particular skill or trade. Instead, they stood in the marketplaces every morning and waited for someone with a job to do to hire them. They typically did things like carry heavy loads from place to place, or they assisted masons by carrying the bricks and stones from the quarry to wherever they needed to be. They might help farmers who didn't have oxen or a plow to break up the soil to prepare it for planting. They might cut wood for the ovens. The thing is, they could never count on getting hired any particular day. There would be groups of day laborers standing around waiting to have the opportunity to do very hard, demanding labor, but had no guarantee of getting to work or of getting paid and being able to provide for their families. Jesus told a parable about a man who hired day laborers throughout the day to work in his vineyard and then paid those who had worked only an hour or so the same as those who had worked all day. From this story, we learn of the overwhelming generosity of God's grace. So that's some of the ways things were in Bible times, at least as far as daily work goes. But we can't forget that in our daily work, we are called to understand it as something we do to serve others. And we're supposed to do it well because we are supposed to also do it to glorify God. On Monday, I told you of what Martin Luther said. The Christian shoemaker does his duty not by putting little crosses on the shoes, but by making good shoes, because God is interested in good craftsmanship. In other words, what you do well. Do it with compassion. care, and love. It's the Christian vocation. It's the Christian calling. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.